Hey, this is going to be an explanation of the per grain filter in Grainferno. So I have this sound loaded up. And here's how it sounds with some random per grain filtering. Okay, so per grain filtering means that each grain that's generated by Grainferno, which has distinct properties like the pitch and the pan and the gain and so on, can also have a distinct filter cutoff and resonance. There's some different filter types to choose from here. Let's go with a simpler example. So I'll turn off the scan, I'll turn off all the randomness that I have linked up, so we can hear what it sounds like when we start to adjust the filter. And you can hear that it just sounds like a basic low-pass filter. We start to get some actual interesting properties when we start to modulate this very quickly so that each grain has an actual distinct filter cutoff that's significantly different than the other ones. So I'll link the randomness. I have this random modulator. I'll link it to the cutoff via drag and drop. It's just like I had before. And now so each grain that's generated will have a random filter cutoff. Right, the filter's moving very quickly, but we don't hear the sweeping of the filter. That's because each grain will have its random filter position, but it will not move within that grain. Let's start to get an even more interesting sound if we add some scatter, so we're selecting from different parts in the sample. And let's add back in the panning randomness so that we can hear each distinct grain a little bit better. An important thing to note is that we will probably want a fairly large size so that a lot of grains are overlapping. As you can see, the size is a multiplier, and that basically is going to refer to how many grains are going to be overlapping at once. Okay, so we've looked at one pretty interesting use case of the granular filter, which is the random per grain cutoff. And also we looked at the resonance random per grain earlier. But there's a lot of other ways in Grainferno to get pretty quick modulations that really give you a distinct value per grain. And another great one is the grain sync modulator, which will play through its pattern within a number of grains. So for example, 4 grains will play through the pattern, so we can basically sequence how certain parameters will move over time within a unit of grains. So let's map this to the filter cutoff. And I have it at a rate of 4 grains now. Let's turn off the scatter. Okay, so that's pretty interesting, but it kind of just sounds like a normal filter sweep because it's moving just in a very static downwards motion. We're not really hearing each grain very distinctly. So let's do some other things. Let's link the LFO, still with the grain sync, to the pan. And so now the panning will also be modulated in a pattern based on, each consecutive grain. It should be the case that the left grains, the ones that are in our left ear, will have this higher filter cutoff, and then by the time we modulate to the right, then we'll have a lower filter cutoff. And then maybe let's add the resonance back in. Okay, so now we're really making use of the per grain filtering because we're modulating the grains along the stereo space as well, and so we're hearing the different filter effects that are all happening at the same time because so many grains are overlapping. So now we could add back in the scan. Okay, and I think we're getting some pretty interesting effects from that. Again, you can play with the other filter shapes. For example, bandpass is very useful, but it's pretty aggressive, so. So yeah, that's some examples of what you can do with the per grain filtering.